friends. Today is a very good day indeed. You know why, okay? It's because we are going to talk all about the history of the Cadillac Seville. Let's do it. One of my mentors and our good family friend George for letting me film this awesome 1978 Cadillac Seville. Now, if you aren't familiar with this channel, what we do is we talk all about cars, sports cars, classic cars, odd little German bubble cars that I love. We talk all about the history of the cars, anything that's interesting, anything that's unique. And if that's your cup of tea, then you should press subscribe, wherever that button is. Now, we'll start off with a little bit of history about Cadillac because, you know, I can't resist. And then we will begin on the actual history of the Seville. Now, let's go all the way back in time and talk about one of my favorite automotive figures, Henry Leland. Yes, that maverick, that engineer, that automotive entrepreneur, okay? Henry Leland is also the gentleman that brought you Lincoln, all right? He would do that after Cadillac. My favorite part about Henry Leland is that he is the man behind two of America's most competitive luxury lines. That's funny. Also, fun fact about Mr. Leland, he also brought you electric beard clippers. Pretty cool. All right, let's go ahead and paint the picture. It's 1902 and the Henry Ford Company is going bust, okay? Henry Ford, sometimes a little, Henry Ford, kind of a dick sometimes. Ford gets into a major tiff with his investors, all right? And he is like, I am out. And so his financial backers are put into a real bind. And that is when Henry Leland comes into play. They ask him to come into the factory and liquidate, confirm whatever assets there are. And old Leland came up with a plan. And so clever Leland said, well, you know, I already have a single-cylinder engine, one that he had already been producing for Oldsmobile. He said, I have this engine, we have a manufacturing plant, let's make something work. So instead of liquidating, they decided to create the Cadillac Company. And so yes, a tiff between Henry Ford and his investors would later be the first domino that would create the Cadillac Automobile Company. This will come back to kind of haunt Henry Leland when he sells Lincoln, but that's a different video, and I actually have that video if you click on this link right here. And now some of y'all might be saying, well, where in the world did the name Cadillac come from? Well, it came from the French explorer, the gentleman that actually founded Detroit in 1701. And his name was, and God forbid I'm going to butcher this because I did not take French in high school. Actually, I didn't even take Spanish in high school, I took German. Anyways, let me shoot this out. God forbid, I'm probably going to get it wrong, whatever. Antoine Lamé de la Mothe sur le Cadillac. That probably was not near correct. All right, that is as brief as I think I can get with the founding, the starting of Cadillac. All right, guys, it's 1975, and already by now, U.S. safety regulations have been either driving out some awesome European cars and or boring them down, okay? The Vietnam War is ending after the fall of Saigon, Jaws the movie's being released, people are wearing silly hats, Mr. Potato Man comes out, SNL debuts on NBC, and Bruce releases Born to Run album, and Muhammad Ali, aka Cassius Clay, has beat Joe Frazier at the Thrilla in Manila. Now, another thing that was going on in the 70s, aside from safety regulations that was affecting car manufacturers, was the oil crisis, okay? And so Cadillac was in the mindset that they needed to create a smaller, premium-sized vehicle. And people were really starting to realize that bigger did not necessarily mean better. Now, let's talk about how the Seville became known as the Seville, how its name was chosen. One of the first name options was the LaSalle. Now, the LaSalle stopped production in 1940, and if you're not familiar with it, it was basically Cadillac and a different name. Had all the same pretty much parts. It was essentially the same car with a lower price point and a different name. And now another option that was being thrown around was calling this newer, smaller vehicle the Leland. And why is because Leland started Cadillac. But then a few other execs were like, maybe we don't name this car Leland because Leland also started Lincoln, which is currently our direct rival. So that got busted, even though I would have been totally pro that name because I love Henry Leland. So really, there were a ton of new name options that they were throwing around, and the top two were the LaSalle and St. Moritz. So at this point, the Seville wasn't even in the top 3 of names to be chosen. But somehow the Seville ended up winning out, and some of you might be saying, well, where did that even come into play? In 1956, the designation for a 2-door hardtop Eldorado was called the Eldorado Seville. And then you would also see the name Seville pop up a few times later in the Eldorado lineup. All right, so now it's May of 1975 and the Seville is released as an early 1976 model. And really Cadillac's main goal was to restore its image among the young yuppies, okay? All these yuppies were going after the BMWs and the Mercedes at the time. So the funny thing about the Seville when it was released was it was the smallest Cadillac and the most expensive, okay? Except the I think the Fleetwood limousines were the only thing Cadillac lineup at that time that was more expensive than the Seville. But what's funny about that is like pretty much the inverse of Cadillac's prior marketing strategy, pricing strategy, all of it. With the Seville, certainly some of the styling cues were borrowed from the Rolls Royce Silver Shadow. And it would be those sharp, crisp, angular lines that would lead GM styling for the next decade. Now, the funny thing is that they totally intended the Seville to capture young buyers. However, it actually was very popular in the demographic of elderly women, okay? Now, the Seville was much smaller. It was also like 1,000 pounds less than the Deville. And thus, easy to maneuver, but you all have the same creature comforts that those rich old ladies liked. Interestingly, the first 2,000 Sevilles that popped out of the manufacturing plant were identical. They were all painted the same Georgian silver, and they all had the same features. Pretty much that was just for quality control purposes. The first generation Sevilles were powered by a 350 cubic inch, 5.7 liter V8 that could put in about 180 horsepower, and it had a Bosch electric fuel injection system. So also the Seville was reaching 23 mpg on the highway. And something to think about is that the rest of Cadillac's fleet was still in the single digits for miles per gallon. Then in 1978, they would pop out with 350 cubic inch V8 diesel. All right, so it's 1978, the same year that this car came out, and Cadillac introduces this thing called the Trip Computer, aka Trip Master, which sounds like a couple of reggae bands I'm familiar with. Gonna enjoy saying that a couple of times. Now the Trip Master replaced all the analog gauges with digital. And also the Trip Master did calculations like MPG, time till destination, miles till empty, all these things that we just have regularly in our modern cars. But this was really important because it was the first time we were seeing something like that in the States. All right, so it's 1980 and we are seeing the start of the second generation Seville. And we would also see the start of the styling for the razor edge bustle back rear end. And that styling was inspired by famous British coach builder Hooper and Company and their Empress line in the 1950s. And it's important to note that this was one of the last vehicles designed by legendary Bill Mitchell, who was recruited by legendary Harley Earl. And just a few of Bill Mitchell's other accomplishments: 70s Camaro, Cadillac Coupe Deville, your early Bel Airs, and the Corvette Stingray. And then we would see the third generation pop up in 1986. And frankly, it's boring, all right? The styling was overly cautious, and it's just boring, all right? And the consumers felt like it looked way too much like the other GM vehicles, but it had the Cadillac price tag on it. All right, now it is 1992 and the fourth generation has come out, and granted it is less boxy, but it's a little more bulky. It did earn Motor Trend's Car of the Year award, which was pretty awesome, and the styling was supposed to be inspired by the 1988 Cadillac Voyager concept car. And just 6 years later, we would have the fifth generation, all new designed, and what's interesting about it is that it was the first Cadillac ever officially engineered to be both right-hand and left-hand drive. And why, you might ask? Well, Cadillac was planning on importing them to South Africa, Japan, and the UK. And fun fact on all those vehicles that were built specifically to export, they actually had slimmer bumpers. They had smaller bumpers so that they could fit under, there's some kind of a taxation for passenger cars if it's over 5 meters. So they stayed under those 5 meters. And then in 2005, that would be the last year selling the Seville. And its successor would be the Cadillac STS. So tell me what you think. What is your favorite generation of Seville? Was Seville the right name choice? Of those mentionings of Bill Mitchell's styling accomplishments, what of those were your favorite? Was Harley Earl's time period at GM one of the best for styling? If I missed any real cool fact about the Seville, let me know, write it in the below, you know, because I'm into this stuff and I'd like to know more. Some things I excluded purely because they didn't interest me enough, and sometimes I just don't have enough time, and I also get tired. So, thank you for watching. If you have anything nice to say, well, by all means, go ahead and say it. If you have anything negative to say, obviously, keep it to yourself. We don't need trolls. And if you enjoy these kinds of videos, well, then by all means, press the subscribe button that's somewhere around here. And until next time, we'll see you again.